Okay, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be working on value. Okay, value. Not value like money, but value like variations of light and dark. Okay, so let me flip my camera so you can see what I am presenting over here, and then we will start taking our notes. Let me go settings, camera. Boom. Flip a do. Okay, so value. Value is, and I write in all capitals. You don't have to write in all capitals. It just makes my writing a lot more legible. It is the relative degree of lightness and darkness. The relative degree of lightness and darkness. Oh, lightness. Of a particular color. The relative degree of lightness and darkness of a particular color. Okay, so whenever I say, or whenever you're listening to an art teacher or an artist or someone talking about value, it's talking about the different tints and shades. Now we're going to add these two words in as well. Okay, tint, and this will happen when we start getting into some color things. Okay, what a tint is. It is a color with white added to it.
You're moving, dog. You're moving.
A color with white added to it. Hey, I'm in a class now. You gotta stop. And a shade, like sitting underneath a tree. Shade is a color with black added to it.
What's the middle word?
Tint.
Oh, tint. Okay, that's what it is.
INT. And then shade is SHADE. Color with white added to it. And a shade is color with black added to it. Now I'm doing this in pen and Sharpie, but when I start drawing, we're going to be doing it in pencil because pencil is the best way that we have to control the amount of value that we are putting on to our canvas. Okay. Okay, so now once I have that written out, underneath it, I'm going to, it doesn't have to be huge and it doesn't even have to be perfect, but I'm going to draw out with my straight edge a rectangle, pretty wide rectangle. You don't need to make it really big though. I'm actually making it bigger than you need to. It could be a lot smaller than this because we're going to end up coloring this thing in, okay? So I want to make myself a rectangle. And I'm going to darken this up in pencil. Can you guys see that all right in pencil or not?
It's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And I'm going to take a second to make sure we all have a chance to get that done. Oh, sorry, I missed your note, Teresa. Yes, we are copying this down. Okay. And then this next part doesn't have to be perfect by any means. But the next thing I'm going to do is right in the middle of this, I'm going to draw a line straight up and down. And then in the middle of these on the left, I'm going to draw another line straight up and down. In the middle of these ones on the right, I'm going to draw a line straight up and down. So now it's broken up into 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the middle of those, each one of those, I'm going to draw a line straight up and down. So now I have 8 sections. Okay, so please do that. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I'm going to label them. Okay, so my notes that I should have my value definition, tints and shades. I should have this box, and then I should have off of that box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to label this rectangle that I have here, and what this will be called, what you're creating is called a value scale. Oh, my stuff's freaking out. What happened? You also there? My computer's going crazy. I think we're all right. That was weird. Now, in this value scale, we are going to end up showing a different variation of a value scale going from darkest to lightest. Okay. Now, how we create that with our pencils is really important, is its pressure. So the amount of pressure that you put down on your pencil is really important, and that's what I'm going to test you on right now, okay? So if you look at my hand right here, and you see my pencil on my hand, let me try to go a little closer. My pencil's right here. This is barely touching it. You can barely touch it. And you can see that if I push harder, you see it bend my skin, okay? So when I talk about pressure, when I talk about our pencil pressure, this is an 8. See that? Pushing really hard is an 8. This, barely touching, is going to be our 2, okay? So what I want you to do in this 8 over on the far right-hand side, I want you to color this in to the best of your ability. Make it look nice. Don't make it look like a kindergartner. Color this in and make it as dark as you possibly can with your pencil. So I'm going to do this along with you right now. You should be following along. I have a suspicion that some of you are not, but that is your choice. Now this pencil doesn't allow me to get very dark, but I'm still going to get it as dark as I can by pushing down pretty hard. Obviously, you don't want to push down so hard that you rip through the paper, which I almost did. But I'll make sure every little bit of white is covered. And I'm like that. So you should end up with an 8. That is the darkest. And that's pretty much the darkest that I can get my pencil without it starting to rip through the paper. Now, if my 8 is going to be a super, super, super dark, my 1 is going to be what? Nothing. Exactly. It's going to be absolutely nothing. So we'll leave our 1 right here. We'll leave it as light as possible. Do not color in the 1 at all. Don't touch it. This is going to be a pure white. Now that 2, though, the 2 is going to be, going back to my hand, this analogy, the 2 is going to be barely touching my hand. So if you take your pencil and rub it across your hand, it should be like a light tickle. That's how light your pressure should be. Another tip that I will give you is what I like to do with my light pressure. I'll take my pencil, so I can kind of hold this at an angle, and instead of holding it like this, see how my pencil's straight up and down? What I'll do is I'll lay it down almost flat on its side. And so my pencil stroke ends up being a little bit wider and a little bit lighter, if you can see that. Okay, so but I gotta make sure I don't press it very much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna control my pencil, and I'm just gonna go light enough so I can barely see pencil being left on the paper. And your success to this part is gonna be how awesome you do this. So I'm going to go back and forth. And I'm seeing that as I'm doing this, I'm putting a little bit too much pressure in some spots. I want to try to make it as even as possible. Just going to ghost this thing. Leah, go see where your sister's going outside. Okay, so now I have my 8. I have my 2. See, my 2 is slightly darker, and there's a shadow right there, huh? My 2 is slightly darker than my 1. Just slightly. Thank you, guys. Okay, so now let's work ourselves through this. Our 8 is super dark. Our 1 is white. Our 2 is a little bit in between. So, or sorry, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. I mean, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in between those. So let's go from our 2 and our 8, and let's go right in between that to our 5. And with our 5, this is how I'm going to work my value. Let me go like this. You can see me, although my face will be upside down. Yep, it's upside down. I'm not going to do that. Let's go back down to the paper. So what's going to happen is I'm going to start my 5 as a 2. So watch this real quick. It's super hard to take darkness away from a pencil drawing. It's always easier to add to it. So when I'm working with my value, I'm going to be super patient, and I'm going to go really light with my pencil. Hey, girls, please stop. Sorry, I apologize for my kids.
Daddy, you have a package.
Thank you, honey. And I'm going to lightly lay down what is going to be my 2. And then I'm going to go a little bit harder with my pressure. And if you can see how I'm holding my pencil, I normally hold my pencil like this. But I might change it up and hold it like this, almost like a Harry Potter wand a little bit.
Daddy, your
Yeah, I'm a nerd.
package.
I'm sorry. Thank you for my package. That's awesome, honey. I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to probably put a little bit more pressure. And then I'm going to put a little bit more pressure. And I'm going to put a little bit more pressure. And then I'm going to get it to a spot where I feel that that's a pretty good in between from my 2 and from my 8. Now, as I look at this one right here, kind of think I need to add a little bit more to it. It might, that looks more like it might be a 4 for me. So I'm going to go back one more time, add a little bit more on it, but not enough where I'm getting up in that 5 and that 6. Or the 6 and the 7, I mean. Okay. So now I have my 1, my 2, my 5, and my 8. And now the next step is to start filling in my 3 and my 4 and fill in my 6 and my 7. So like I said before, I'm going to start and make my 3 the exact same way that I made my 2. So I want, when I'm done with my 3, I want it to look exactly like my 2 does. I'm going super light. And I should see no real difference between my 3 and my 2. The one realization that I just had is I started doing my 3, and I was like, wow, that's a lot lighter than my 2, which means I probably could have gone lighter with my 2, right? But now that I get it here, and my 2 and my 3 are pretty similar, I'll just go and put a little bit more pressure on my 3 to make it a little bit darker, but I don't want it anywhere near my 5. And again, this is training you and teaching you how to vary the pressure of your pencil, how to change it up. Put a little bit more pressure, make it a little bit darker. And again, this takes patience. I'm working a little bit more and more. And then once I do that, I'm going to carry that over to my 4. If you see right now how I'm starting to lay this out, I have my 1, 2, 3. My 4 looks really a lot lighter than my 3 and my 5. But then I need to start working it up and try to get it to where it is darker than my 3 and lighter than my 5. This might not be perfect either, so understand that. I'm not expecting you all to just come knock this thing out of the park. What this is just a practice. It's a practice so you can train your hand how to adjust the pressure of your pencil to make your value a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. It's also a practice to teach you how to see the difference in the value. Because even though you might not understand it, there's value changes all around you. I think that's all right. And plus, don't feel that you're challenged by me because I've done value scales things for like my entire life. So as you see my 1, 2, 3, now that I'm looking at this, my 2 is really dark. Like my 2 is a lot darker than it probably should be because there's a giant jump from my 1 to my 2. And then there's a nice even transition from my 2 to my 3 to my 4. Okay. I'm going to finish out these last 2, my 6 and my 7. So I'm going to go a little bit darker than my 5 for my 6.
Oh, Daddy, get up there.
And like I said, I'm not using like your generic number 2 pencil. This is like a really cheap pencil. And so it's not allowing me to get some really, really darks. You guys might do a lot better than mine because the pencil you can use will give you a lot darker colors and shade, or a lot darker shades. All right, it looks a little bit darker than that 5 that I had. Then my last one, I'm gonna go almost a full dark to get my 7. Again, I'm kind of using, you might be able to see the tip of my pencil is kind of flattening out a little bit. Kind of using it like holding it again like a wand. I want to make sure it doesn't get quite as dark as my 8, but I want to make sure that I am darker than my 6. And I'm realizing I got to push pretty hard on this 7 with my bad pencil that I have. All right. Really hard pencil. And so what happens by the end of this is I see that I now have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Practicing and feeling the amount of pressure that I had on my pencil. I'll give you a little more time to kind of play with that a little bit.
What happens when your 6, 7, and 8 kind of blend together?
Yeah, and that's so the whole purpose of this is that's trying to figure out that scale, right? So is your 5 pretty dark? Yeah, show me what you got. Oh, it's all right. Yeah, you kind of had the same situation that I did, where my pencil's pretty hard, and so it can't get very dark. And so your 1 and your 2 really different, like mine are. Yeah, so both of us probably should go a little bit lighter for our 2. Our 2 should probably be a 3. You can leave it where it's at. You don't need to change it. But your 2 would probably end up being a 3. Your 3 would be a 4. And then these 2 would both end up, because my 6 and my 7 are pretty similar. Those would probably be 1 as a 7. So then everything just kind of shifts over 1. But we're just practicing right now, so I'm not worried about being perfect. So good job with that. And if the rest of you are doing it and have the same issue, that's totally fine. All we're doing is trying to practice and see if we can do a variation here. I'm not going to give you a 2 out of 5 if your value scale isn't perfect. Okay, so that's kind of how we want to work with our value. Now, the homework for you is going to be, as you go through your day, I want you to be looking around and seeing the value changes around you. I mean, I'm looking at stuff around me right now and I can see value changes. I see value changes right here. See this big old shadow from my camera that I have? That's a value change between my white paper and my camera. If I'm going to draw this, I'm going to make sure that I put my shadow right here to start drawing it. And another thing that we're going to get into, which we'll try and transition to right now, but understand too, if I'm drawing this shadow, I'm not going to draw a solid line because there is no line. It's just a transition between lights and darks. So that concept of value is super important as we're going forward with this. Okay. So here's our value scale, 1 through 4, or 1 through 8. I mean, good job. If you're there, if you're not done yet, go ahead and pause where you're at right now because we're going to move on to our last section of this. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the far left side of my box. I'm basically going to remake another one of these value scales underneath it. So I'm going to take this line. I'm going to draw another little one down here. I'm going to go across. I'm going to draw another line down here. And then I'm going to draw a line connecting that across. I'm just going to make the box. I'm not going to put the little lines in it. So again, just create your box. Okay, and now underneath this new box you drew, go ahead and rewrite as close as you can. Rewrite underneath it the numbers, not inside the box, but right underneath the box. So you should have the same exact thing. We just don't have these little vertical lines in it. So we don't have the sections. We just have one big box. Okay. Now, I'm going to burst a lot of your bubble right now. And I apologize. I don't mean to be the mean art teacher. But when I was growing up and I was drawing and I draw a box. And I draw a box kind of like this. And I wanted to shade in one side. This is what I would do. I would go like this, and I'd color it in. I'd do a pretty good job. And then what do I do next? I take my finger, and I go like this, and I rub it back and forth, and I rub it back and forth, and I go, yeah, it's blended in. But then I have this like ghosted effect around the outside of my box because I smudged pencil all over the place. And then I get fingerprints all over my paper because my fingers are all covered in pencil. So I have to come back with my eraser, and then I have to erase the smudges away. And then it was like, oh, it was super frustrating, right? Or if I was really advanced, I go get a piece of Kleenex or a piece of toilet paper, and I'd wrap that up, and then I'd come and I'd smudge, and I'd smudge, and I'd smudge, and I'd smudge, okay? It's totally fine, totally understandable. But what I want you to do is I want you to utilize the pressure of your pencil for your transitions instead of the pressure instead of smudging it with your finger. Now, I have a picture that I'm going to try to pull up for you right now that I drew for a buddy of mine, and I did it I did it with pencil. Let me see if I can get it for you real quick. Hold on. I did it with pencil, and I felt that I was pretty successful. And I didn't do any smudging or anything like that. I just really focused on the value transitions, the value changes, and how to make it look as realistic as possible. So give me 1 second. One second. I can do it on my phone. My account's not working. So let me go here. Okay. Now see if we can see this on my friend of mine played football with me in college or in high school. And then he went on to the NFL. And so this is a pencil drawing that I drew of him. Now, the whole drawing that I did, it was all not smudged. it was all just blended in nice and even with my pencil. But as you notice, there's no like lines and edges. Like you look at the side of his face right here, there's not a line to make the side of his face. It's just a transition of values. It's a light value pushed up against a dark value. Same thing with everything else. So the point of learning value is to realize how to control your pencil. So with this next test down here that we're going to do, I don't say test to freak you out and make it sound like it's something huge. I say test in terms of like trying to better ourselves. What I want to do is I'm going to take this value scale that I just made, and I want to create the same value scale down here, okay? Now, before I put it on this, I'm going to use this lower piece of my paper, UR2, to practice. And this is how I want you to practice. I want you to start, you can go right to, I tend to go left to right better because I'm right-handed. And I can kind of drag my pencil. So usually when I do a value scale like this, I'll take this and flip it upside down. So I can go my right to my left. Sorry, my left to my right. But watch, I'll go like this and I'll push really, really hard in my practice space. And then as I drag towards my hand, I will lighten my pencil. I will lighten my pencil. I'll light my pressure, light my pressure, light my pressure. And get it so I'm barely touching it.
Can I start from 8, go down to 1 because I'm left-handed?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you can start any way you want to like that. So if you see how I just did this right here, I started with a lot of really hard pressure, and then I work myself through and try to just relieve the pressure as much as I can as I went to the end. And now what I can do is once I get to this point, I can go back again and then kind of push it and pull it. So if I want my lightness or my darkness to stretch more, I just color over a little bit more. And then I can color with more pressure back here and really put a lot of pressure back here on this back end. Make it really, really tough. And then I'll come back here and I'll lighten it up again and then go back to nothing. So you want to try to take this transition and put it into this whole color line, this whole color scale, okay? So try to do that. Remember, the one area is going to be white, but I don't want to have these lines in between. It's going to be a nice, even transition to the best of your ability. So go ahead and try that now. And like Livy just said, I'm just going to go like this. I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to start with my 8, and I'm going to work myself backwards. I'm going to do this with you just so you can have some moral support. An example while you go. Now, if you look at mine, I have my 7 and my 8 done. So I have my 7 and 8, but I can see kind of a line in the middle of where the 2 are. I can see this break right here. So that's where I got to come back with it, and I got to try to blend back and forth with my pressure and try to get rid of that line. I can also try, if I would like, to extend my color all the way out. See how I'm sending my shade all the way out to my 5 and my 4, because I know that it's going to be at least that light. So I'm going to extend this whole thing out, and then I'm going to come back and darken it up for my 6 and my 5, trying to use my color scale, my value scale above it to kind of check my colors and make sure they're all on the same page. And if you watch me real quick, go ahead and pause what you're doing and watch me. You'll see that as I'm going and covering a lot of ground now, I'm kind of floating from my 4, my 5, back to my 5 and my 6, really back to my 6 and my 7 to get rid of this little line that I have here. And then I'll float back over to my 5 and my 6 and my 4, and I'll go out to my 3 and my 2 now maybe, and go really light with those. I'm going to try to get my 2 lighter than it was last time. I'm going to go a little, pick it up a little bit more. Pick it up a little more. I'm going to push really hard down here. Go really light over here. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. I really like this. This is fun. Okay, how you guys doing on that? So here's mine. Here's my 8. You see my 8 is kind of similar to my other 8. And then I try to make sure I get rid of the little transition line so I can't see it as it goes across. I'm trying to get it the same likeness. And notice, like I said, my 2, I wanted to go with my 2 and my 3 a lot lighter than my 2 and 3 were here. So I went really, really light on this end. Let me see what you got. Olivia. Good. Okay, now start pulling that thing out and try to, like I was doing, really start working this way and back and forth and back and forth. Go really, really light and then darken it as you move farther to that 8. Yeah, Anne Marie, if you want to show or hold your picture to your camera, I can check it out. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So the thing that you did that I was trying to work with was I started going up and down like you were doing, and by going up and down, I found that I was getting it. It looked really chunky, so I started trying to go left and right, and really like going light to dark. Light pressure to hard pressure, light pressure to hard pressure, and as I started doing that, that made it kind of flow a little bit nicer. So as you start finishing it or finalizing it, you can go ahead and do that. Anybody else want to show me your picture? Let me check it out for you. It'd be great. I'd love to be able to get that feedback right now instead of doing it over typing later. Nice job. Teresa, good. Yep, that looks good. Grant, good. Now, so see how that I can kind of see the different lines in between it. So take your pencil and start going left to right now and try to kind of blend those in. It's almost like you're erasing it, but you're not erasing it. You're just adding more value to it, if that makes sense. That's a good job. Good pencil control for sure. Hopefully some of you all that are working on it can saw some examples from some other kids too. Anybody else looking for some feedback?
I guess I can.
Yeah.
Here it is. Control.
Yeah, nice. Good. Very, very, very good. I am confident. You guys are awesome. Okay. Let me go like this. Okay. That's fantastic. So I didn't want to get into too much more than just this value scale for right now. Just to intro the concept and have you play with it. Feel free to keep playing with it. What I want you to do is you're going to take a picture of this. Okay. I want the two definitions. I want the broken off or the sectioned off value scale, and then the smooth transition value scale. Those are going to be, take a picture of those and turn those in the assignment that I'm going to post right now. And that's what we have for today. Super proud of you guys. That's awesome. If you're done with it, then go ahead. You can log off and turn it in when you're ready. If not, you can stay here and keep working. But we are done for the day. So go ahead, and when I post that assignment, please turn yours in, and I will see you all tomorrow. Fantastic job.